Good evening. My name is Ksenia McCoskey, and I am a co-student supervisor and a student project manager here at the Clark Forum for Contemporary Issues at Dickinson College. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that Dickinson College was founded on the unceded territory of the Susquehannock peoples. We hereby recognize the prior status and enduring diversity of this land and the many Indigenous nations that stand in relation to it, particularly the thousands of Indigenous children from dozens of different tribal nations forced or coerced into the pre-programming camp established at the Carlisle Indian Industrial School starting in 1879. Dickinson endorsed and gave material support to these cultural eradication efforts. Turn of the 20th century presidents facilitated land acquisition and charitable donations, while others conferred honorary degrees to 2 Carlisle Indian Industrial School superintendents. Dickinson faculty delivered lectures in classes both at Carlisle Indian Industrial School and on campus. This relationship represents our failure to have recognized in these peoples and their nations different but no less self-sovereign ways of thinking, living, and being. We recognize and take responsibility for the college's support of this attempted eradication of Indigenous peoples, a profound moral failing in stark opposition to our mission today. No single acknowledgement is sufficient to the task before us. Accordingly, this living land acknowledgement is incomplete by design and under revision by necessity. It reflects our need and our desire to learn from these histories and the Indigenous communities that carry them, to act consciously and responsibly with that knowledge, and to sustain our commitment to this process by regularly reviewing it. While our knowledge remains incomplete, the process of turning honestly towards our history continues to animate our acknowledgement today, even as it orients us towards a more just tomorrow. The violence of settlement, the forced relocation of tribal nations, and the cultural racial program of the Carlisle Indian Industrial School are stories we must recognize, share, and attempt to reconcile with our own. Yet these histories do not diminish the ongoing stories, continuing sovereignty, and enduring strengths of Indigenous nations and people. The interrelated histories of this land lean firmly against easy characterization and the conforming simplicity of a single story. We thus offer this in-process living land acknowledgement with deep humility to the many and varied Indigenous nations and people who by choice or force called this land home. On behalf of the Clark Forum, Dickinson College, Dickinson Catholic Campus Ministry, St. Patrick Church, the Office of the President, the Center for Civic Learning and Action, the Popal Shaw Center for Race and Ethnicity, the Center for Spirituality and Social Justice, and the Departments of Africana Studies, History, Religion, Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies, Educational Studies, and the Leadership in the Age of Uncertainty series, I would like to welcome you to tonight's event, Gender-Based Violence and Women's Education. A year ago, I sat down with the other Clark Forum student project managers to propose a potential speaker. At the beginning of every semester, the student project managers propose and then vote on 2 programs focused on contemporary issues that we would like to develop. I had a particularly ambitious proposal. I wanted to bring Sister Rosemary Nyirumbe to Dickinson. My interest in Sister Rosemary and the St. Monica's Girls Tailoring School in Gulu, Uganda started in middle school when a church parishioner suggested we start collecting soda pop tabs to send to Uganda. I was curious as to what metal pop tabs, usually discarded as trash, could be used for. So I started researching the Sowing Hope Foundation. I learned about the Lord's Resistance Army, also known as the LRA, and about girls, the same age as me, stolen from their families, forced to become child soldiers and sex slaves, and later exiled from their communities. Women formerly abducted by the LRA, considered to be outcasts, were using the tabs to make beautiful bags and accessories. My amazement grew when I learned about the woman who was running the school, Sister Rosemary. I knew that one day I wanted to meet her, and I immediately started sharing her story with everyone. Tonight, I am excited to introduce Sister Rosemary to the Dickinson community. For over 30 years, Sister Rosemary has served victims of violent civil wars that have decimated northern Uganda and South Sudan. According to the United Nations, the LRA is responsible for more than 100,000 casualties and the abduction of 60,000 to 100,000 children from 1987 to 2012. Sister Rosemary defied the LRA and has provided a home and education for women and their children fleeing and recovering from the war. Since 2002, Sister Rosemary has enrolled more than 3,000 women at St. Monica's, where she helps them gain dignity, independence, and hope through training in tailoring, catering, and practical skills. Despite all the atrocities and hardships, her compassion and courage to serve everyone, regardless of where or when she has called, has left the biggest impression on me. In 2014, Sister Rosemary was named one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. Additionally, she has received a CNN Hero Award, the United Nations Impact Award, and she was honored by the Women of the World Summit conferences all over the world, including in New York City, San Francisco, Austin, Switzerland, and London. She is also the subject of the book and documentary Sowing Hope. There will be a question and answer session immediately following the program, so please hold all questions until that time. The Clark Forum welcomes differences of opinion, expressed politely, thoughtfully, and succinctly. Disruptive behavior or harassment of the speakers, members of the Dickinson community, or audience member will not be tolerated. As a show of respect for our speaker and everyone in attendance, please stay until the end of the program, including the question and answer session. For those who received a copy of Sowing Hope, Sister Rosemary will be in the lobby following tonight's event to sign copies. At this time, I ask that you please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices. In the event of an emergency, please know that accessible exits are located on the west side of the building. And now, please join me in welcoming Sister Rosemary Nyirumbe.
Thank you all for that extensive introduction. And sometimes when I hear about these introductions, I'm taken by surprise. And I'm sure many people, before seeing Sister Rosemary, would think, maybe she's somebody very tall, and here I am, very short. Behind the podium, almost getting lost there. And many times I had to adjust this speaker. It's my pleasure to be here, and I want to thank everybody who took time to make arrangement to let me come here. It was a new place for me. It's my first time being here, and I'm so happy to see that warm welcome and friendly atmosphere. This morning I had a great time with the children, and it's normally interesting to speak to children. That means you have to adjust yourself because the audience you're meeting are different people. And this time they were kids. And oftentimes I could see they were shy to see me, either because they've never met an African nun or just a nun. I know many times the nuns have got some bad names because of beating people and being tough. And I always say, even if the nuns were tough on you, it has made you to be what you are. That's why you are like that. So we still have to thank those nuns. I come from northern Uganda, and I'm sure many of you have heard about northern Uganda or Uganda itself, but I'm always specific because northern Uganda has a big history which has continued up to now, especially the history of conflict. And when we are talking about gender-based violence and education, there are two different topics in as far as northern Uganda is concerned. For those of you who have researched and have read about the conflict in northern Uganda, we have to know the conflict started by a woman who was called Alice Lakwena. She started it like in a simple way, but planning to overthrow a government. She didn't last for long. She was chased away. And when she left, her cousin came and took over and started following the same movement. But the cousin changed the name. Alice Lakwena named her rebel as the Holy Spirit movement. These people all tried to be very close to the church to show that they were really holy, but there was nothing holy about that Holy Spirit. Then, when the cousin took over, he decided to call his rebel group as the Lord's Resistance Army, and he also based himself on thinking that he was fighting to restore the 10 Commandments. That tells you exactly that a person like that did not actually know the 10 Commandments, because in thinking to restore the 10 Commandments, he broke all of them. All. So that is not also something you can think was a holy war. But all the same, this Lord's Resistance Army became more infamous because they were coming to cause atrocities in their own land. In the beginning, even the government of Uganda thought, these people have started this war, they will not continue, they will stop it because they are fighting their own people. But that was not true. This war continued on. And of course, the rebels never even got closer to government soldiers, to the point that they were bringing in more of their own children, abducting the children, abducting women, training child soldiers, training boys and girls were being prized because they could become wives to the rebel commanders. Young children were given. And then, apart from that, no number you hear of children who are abducted would be able to describe adequately the number of children who are lost in northern Uganda. There are so many who are killed, there were so many who are unaccounted for, and there are so many who still have remained in the bush up to now. I was very surprised to know that there are still children in the bush. They are no longer children, they are big. Some of them have become wives, and some of them have become fathers. And some of the women have become grandparents in the bush. 2 weeks ago, I received one woman who came home with her grandchildren, and she was once a student of St. Monica before she was abducted. She was abducted twice. The second time, she didn't come back until last July or last year. She came back with her children and the grandchildren. This woman was given to the rebel commander. She was a wife to Joseph Kony himself. And this woman came with her own son, who is now 29 years old. And the boy named himself. I asked him, I said, what is your name? He said, I am called Ali Kony. It scared me. I asked him, I said, why do you call yourself the name of your dad? He said, sister, I did not choose to be the son of that man. And that name is not only my name. There are many people with that name. But it was interesting to see that he was scared, and at the same time, he still uses the name of his father. But that is a situation which is really existing right now. I thought we were done with the abduction, we were done with everything in as far as the Lord's Resistance Army is concerned. To my surprise, I started receiving new people coming in St. Monica just last week and 2 weeks ago. The situation of women and children in northern Uganda became a very pathetic situation because these young children, when they were abducted, they were brought back, forced to commit atrocities in their own homes, forced to kill sometimes their parents and also their siblings. And they were forced to abduct more children because the Lord's Resistance Army used the tactics of increasing the number of their armies by bringing in more children. by abducting more women who could become their wives and give birth to more children who would become soldiers in the bush. Nobody had control over this, and of course, a mother or a parent would see her children taken in front of her. One time a woman came to me with the two girls, and she asked me, "Sister, I would like to leave these girls with you." And I was wondering why she wanted to do that. When I asked her, I said, "You are strong, why don't you stay with your kids? Because here I have so many children running from the rebels and hiding." The woman told me, said, "Sister, one of these girls was raped in front of me, and I cannot keep them anymore." I felt very sad for her, and I took in both girls to remain with us there. But this is the situation. You could see parents surrendering their children because they were either killed or mistreated or taken away from them. So this is the background of northern Uganda for a long time, for over a decade. And this is exactly the situation. When I was sent by my superiors, I went to St. Monica just because I took the vow of obedience. Because I knew the situation was bad, I knew I was not going to make any change, but still I accepted to go there. And I told my superiors, because they started by apologizing that we are sorry to send you in the bad situation because you have been there already. And I responded immediately and said, "Do not apologize if it is God's will. And if I must go there because God wants me to go there, I am ready even to make life on top of water, if it means so." And I decided to drive myself to go to that bad situation. I knew the situation was very complex, but I at the same time had confidence because I come from northern Uganda myself. I know the culture, I know the language, and I knew I would do something very small. But when I arrived, I was helpless to see such a situation of children and women, and also to know that I had nothing else I could offer. I felt helpless because I just completed my university and I learned, I got my degree in development studies and ethics, and I found there was no need of any paper in such a place. What was I going to do with that? I said, okay, I don't know why I came here. So my being desperate gave me chance to study the situation. I said, I will live in a moment. I will see the signs of time. When I looked at the signs of time, I saw the suffering of these women. They dropped out of school, they were forced out of school. I had not known that in the group of students I had, there were girls who were commanding officers of the rebels. When I learned that, I took another step. I said, I need to be more friendly. I need to come close to listen. So my qualification became listening. My qualification became just being sympathetic, finding out exactly what I could do. And so I decided that I was not a seamstress. This is a school where we're supposed to teach women how to sew. I did not know what to do. I had to teach myself how to sew. I had to change exactly what we were teaching because they were giving them like theory in dressmaking and cutting. But you cannot give theory to a person who has never been in school or a person who dropped out of school. I decided to change the whole thing to become practical dressmaking and cutting. And you'll be surprised what it is. It is looking at a person and deciding how you can take measurement of a person, divided into 4, 2 in front and 2 behind. That was how simple I went. The next thing was I found myself helpless. When I sent a radio announcement to the women, I said, I know there are many girls out there who have been in captivity with the rebels, and if you are there, come to our center as you are. If you are pregnant, come. If you have children, come. Come with your children. And that alone landed me into trouble. Because after they heard that, I got so many girls who reported with the children, not only with the children, but also with the babysitters. So the number was big, and I was overwhelmed. And again, I had to think, I said, why did I make the mistake of making an announcement? Let me think of what else I can do. So I decided to think that the children could be given kindergarten training and care. But did we have any house? There was nowhere to put them because there were more than 50 children. So I thought, well, we don't have rain now. We can keep these children under a tree. And I hired one woman. One woman was taking care of more than 50 children under one tree. So that gave a moment for the girls to go to class and learn while their children were being cared for by someone else. And from time to time, I would give chance to the women to go and breastfeed their children. And at the same time, they would take a moment to carry the children on their backs and start playing with one another. At that point, I began to understand how these young girls were rebuilding their lost childhood. They were children, growing children, and got an opportunity where they felt more accepted. Because returning from captivity with the children, most of these girls were rejected by the families, they were rejected by the society. The people feared that they were potential killers, they were murderers. And so, for that reason, they found St. Monica like a quiet, a safe environment where they were accepted wholly, while they were being trained to make their own lives better. Their children were also receiving education. And of course, you would ask me, what type of education are you offering for these women? The simple education was this sewing, which meant a lot. Sewing for me was very significant because imagine that these women were taught to destroy life using machine guns. I decided to value the meaning of sewing machine to mend the brokenness of these women. I always told them, you have to sew, you have to hold a needle to sew pieces of clothes together, and that is how you can mend your own broken lives. That is how you can find hope. That is how you can have your own destiny in your own hands. And for me, the needle and machine meant a lot, although it was like playing with words. I kept on telling everybody. Some people asked me, why do you emphasize the question of sewing clothes? There are many second-hand clothes these women can buy. And I was telling, no, that is not the case. What I'm doing is different. It is an indirect way of rehabilitating people by making them sit, and also sometimes they have stories to tell about what they are doing. And that has been what we were totally engaged in. Now, if we talk about what you saw, gender-based violence, I know gender-based violence happens everywhere, but I am focused on conflict situation where gender-based violence is directed towards women. Where does it find its roots? The roots of gender-based violence, especially in situations on conflicts, comes directly from gender inequality. And gender inequality, in our case in northern Uganda, comes from the societal construct. The society constructs gender inequality by assigning different roles to children, boys and girls. I don't know if that happens in the United States, but if it happens, we all have to say mea culpa. It happens everywhere, I know. When children are born, they are little, a baby boy comes, the mother, that is where we women are wrong. The mothers will say, do not cry because you are strong. You are a boy. Don't cry. And for the girl, you have to be gentle because you are a girl. You have to be this, you have to be nice, you have to be kind. So that is the assignment of gender roles. And that brings immediately inequality. And you can see how a society like where I come from in northern Uganda, which is a patrilineal society, you find boys are they're given more power than girls. And so that creates immediately the imbalance, gender imbalance, to the point that these imbalances can bring violence. And of course, in situation of conflicts, you can see exactly that the violence was mostly aimed at women, at little girls. So what else can we do? What I found for me as a way forward, or as a way of solving or mitigating this problem, was to introduce a kind of education. But what type of education are we talking about? I had to carefully think about it. If we bring a type of education which these women don't understand, it will be a waste of time. I thought it was better to ask these women what type of education can restore their dignity. What kind of education can validate them as human beings? What type of education can make them know they did not come without any knowledge? And that makes me to start valuing indigenous knowledge, their own knowledge. And that for me has been the focus of fighting gender-based violence. And the different things I've been introducing, up to the latest I've introduced, is that we are trying to bring in literacy, because we have a large group, a big group of women who cannot read and write. They are still pressing their thumbs to write their names as a signature, and that pains me. So I first started in 2018 a literacy course where these women could come to learn. It was not attractive. From time to time, they would drop and don't come. So I decided, I said, okay, I need to think of another way of introducing literacy. Now, I've introduced what we call learn and earn. So you keep on learning while you're earning at the same time. And one of the things which they do is like these purses we're talking about. You produce for me this purse, I pay you, but you have to tell me the mathematics involved in counting those purses. And you must be able to write your names and write different things. So these women had to sign a contract with me that they are going to produce, they are going to sew, they are going to know how to write their own names, and I'm giving them 6 months. If in 6 months you cannot write your name, then you're not going to get the reward. The reward I'm giving you is a certificate to recognize that you have finished to learn. But the second one, I'm giving you resources to a startup tool or some animals, which sound funny for you here in America. You don't understand why I want to give goats. You don't understand why I want to give pigs. It sounds strange. But the idea is I'm fighting gender-based violence. By giving resources, by putting resources in the hands of these women. Because these women, as they come from captivity, without education, they are doubly disadvantaged. They do not own anything. And at this point, I would like them to start owning some resources. They can buy land. They can do anything with what we are giving them. And for me, that would be a way of letting them to begin to live together in their families. I know their husbands will be very jealous, perhaps, to know that this woman is owning some resources which are supposed to be owned by men, because the men use the animals for paying dowry and marrying women and so forth. But now, I want it to be a family thing. That is the new thing I've just introduced, and I hope it continue and we enroll more women, because we have just started with the 20 women, and I hope these women will really be an example to others. With the gender-based violence, I know very well that there could be many, many ways of finding how we can fight it. But it is very, very difficult in conflict situation. Unless we empower women, unless we give them a voice to speak for themselves, nobody can fight gender-based violence. Because, first of all, the society supports gender-based violence by assigning those roles, by empowering the men. I'm really not against men, but I want the men to know that gender-based violence comes through those kind of avenues. Some of you read some of my work where I started Women's Peace Conference. And of course, the men started asking me, why are we left out? Why are we not invited to come to this conference? I knew it would bring another gender-based violence, so we made it easy by saying, come with one gender-sensitive man to the meeting. And when you come with this man, inform him and remind him that he is not going to speak. He's only going to listen. Why are we not to speak? You have been speaking for many years. It's time to listen. So we constantly have to remind them, listen, we have brought you because we believe you are gender sensitive. Some people ask me, Sister Rosemary, are you gender sensitive? I'm very, very gender sensitive. Why? Because I'm dealing with the situation of children who are boys and girls. And I want to make sure that we try always to bring these children to a different life, to give them hope for the future, give them hope for a better life. By looking at the situation and say, we can transform it, we can change this situation. The generation of tomorrow can be better than this. And we hope these children will not be perpetrators of evil. They will not be perpetrators of conflict. We hope they will see the light in a different way. It's my prayer. And I tell everybody, I was telling children this morning, and I think I can give the same message I give the children. You can all be part of this effort. You can support us all in fighting gender-based violence in conflict situation. I know it is everywhere, it is in the world and everywhere, but I would like us to be focused. We know there are places where people are suffering so much, and it can be overwhelming for you to hear there are conflicts here. Ukraine, Palestine, Israel, Uganda, Nigeria, and because we are human beings, we listen to this, and in a short time we forget. If you listen to my interview with Stephen Colbert, he was asking me, why should I think about what happens in Africa? I said, because they're human beings. And why should I be bothered? And I didn't have much to tell him, but I said, if you don't bother about what happens to humanity, the only thing I can do is to punch you. Punching you may put sense, in your head. And he was surprised that you are a nun and you're going to punch him. I said, yes, I will. Because what happens to humanity cannot be forgotten. We all have to be part of it. We all have to get involved in trying to look for a solution, in trying to prevent it to happen again in future. I think we are all part of the tool which can be used for prevention. And if you hear about what is happening in the world in different parts, and you say it is too much, it is so overwhelming, I don't know where to start from, I cannot solve that problem. Of course you cannot solve it. You have to solve it with other people. But if you remain dormant without thinking or doing anything, I think perhaps I can't pass judgment, but your judgment might be greater. It is wrong to be indifferent. It is important to get involved in any way, in any small way, to bring a change. This morning, I was telling this girl interviewing me, I said, there are many ways you can solve the problem. You can solve problems by going, and you can solve problems by giving. That means you can give by going, and you can go by giving. And that means you have to give yourself, give your time, and put your energy in how you can bring a change in the world. all what happens, I have never claimed I can solve alone. That is why I still take time. When people invite me and want to listen to my story, I would like to come and always share my story with you. I know I would have brought so many of these girls or these women or one or two to speak to you themselves, but I'm speaking on their behalf. Sometimes I speak on behalf of those who are not able to be here at this moment. And hopefully, some of you can take time to come and meet these women, meet the children, speak with them, and become part of their lives, and help us together to fight gender-based violence by promoting different activities, especially a given type of education. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sister Rosemary. At this time, we are going to be starting our question and answer session. Because tonight's event is being recorded, we ask that you first raise your hand and wait for a microphone to reach you before asking your question. We reserve the first question for students, and then we will open it up to the rest of the audience. So at this point, we are looking for our first question.
Firstly, thank you very much for your inspiring words. As a person of African background, my family's Nigerian, how do you propose that we address the gender roles proposed on children through culture? Because since my brother is the oldest boy, like, he will get everything that my father has in the future, and that doesn't necessarily take power away from me because I'm getting my education, but it's still one of those things where it's rooted in culture and it's kind of hard to change because of how that's set up.
Actually, I like the idea you said that these things are rooted in culture. And at the same time, I would like to let you know that culture is dynamic. And until we start going to look into our culture and begin to think that there are certain things in our culture that we can drop, and there are certain things we can promote, that will be very important. And that's why it's very important to promote women with education and let them know they could be part of this change. Because all what is happening is emanating from our cultural point of view. But we cannot remain forever in a culture which doesn't promote any growth of a woman. I'm speaking because I come from the same culture like you, and in my own family, we are 8, 4 boys and 4 girls. Luckily enough, my dad decided to promote the women a little more than the boys, to the point that I see exactly what you're talking about still going on even in my own family. But we women are very strong. We don't give a damn to our brothers. No. If there is anything happening in my family, the women will gang, we come together and we call for a meeting ourselves. So this is not going to happen in this household. And that is because we are empowered. We are educated. And in fact, we are a little more educated than the boys. So we are using our position. And you can use your position when you're educated. When you learn from other cultures, you can bring it in. Not just with the violence. Step by step, sit down and look at what is not promoting our values as women.
Thank you very much for coming. I've enjoyed hearing about your work. I really liked how you explained that teaching them to sew is also rehabilitating them and helping to heal what they've gone through in their life. Once they learn, is there also a practical element to their sewing? Can they make a living sewing? Can they be seamstresses or what once they leave your school? Is that a possibility for them?
There is a great possibility because Uganda, first of all, is a country with so many young people and so many school-going children. And likely enough, I don't know if it's a British thing, all schools in Uganda put on uniforms. So my students have a big market for sewing. And I've never seen any of my students redundant. Even during COVID, I was caught up in the United States for 1 year, and I started thinking, oh, my students are losing it. They're not getting a chance. I started teaching them on Zoom how to make masks. They made so many masks, and they were telling me, sister, what next? What are we going to do? I said, donate them to prisoners and to refugees. We taught them even on Zoom how to make liquid soap, because they said, refugees will not have sanitizers and soap. Let us donate to that. And that was interesting. After that, when I went home, I still recall one organization came and asked us to make more than 5,000 masks. And it was very exciting because the student had already known, and we made them. So I think sewing will always find place. Then another thing which I've been teaching them is cooking. I tell people everywhere, the women will always have a job because of cooking, because eating industry doesn't die. People all want to eat. And you see, I didn't have any certificate in cooking. I didn't have any certificate in sewing, but I decided to make them up. But now, the students who come from my school have certificates in cooking. They are being hired by hotels. And the women are sewing professionally. They're better than me. So I think for me, those practical skills are very, very important.
Hello, I wanted to ask if St. Monica's has been subject to violence in itself from the outside or the government. Have they ever tried to attack or
No.
how safe is it there and how do you keep it safe?
Okay, St. Monica has never received any threat or any violence. And I always tell people, we have been safe in St. Monica, not because we are protected by soldiers and so forth. God really protects us because we are in the open place, we are in the city. But apart from that, I strongly believe many people know we have women who are trained as soldiers. So to come to attack these women, you really have to be better prepared. I still recall one time, I don't know whether it was a prisoner or a thief jumped in St. Monica. I heard the students screaming. They would ran and caught this man like this. So I say, okay, I'm safe. We are safe. But also the government really doesn't have any problem with us. In fact, St. Monica being the only school that accepts women with their children, last year, one of the ministers called me and said, sister, would like you to come and give a presentation to the cabinet about how you are taking school dropouts. And so they all want to adopt how to take women and children to school, but they do not have the premise. They were not prepared. And I told them, I am not going to give you my concept note about this because it took me long to prepare. You can only come and study and see how it is working. Yeah.
Sister Rosemary, thank you again for being here. Because you're a person of profound faith, I wanted to ask you, how do you talk to people who try to use their religion to justify or promote violence?
You know, it's really something you can just know. Anyone who is using religion to justify evil, you know it's wrong. And I think we just have to have courage to tell them that's not right. If you believe in God, and if you are following a religion that tells you don't do this and that, you will not do that evil. Like, for instance, you can hear the Lord Resistance Army say, we are restoring 10 commandments. But then, only one commandment says, thou shalt not kill. And you have killed so many people. You have to have courage to tell the rebels that that is wrong. And they're not using that name of the Holy Spirit or the 10 commandments in the right way. We need to have that courage.
Thank you, Sister Rosemary. What is the process of girls recovering their sense of self, their sense of humanity, reconciling what they did? And is it confusing for them, since they were part of the quote-unquote Lord's army? Does that confuse their relationship with God? Thank you.
You see, it's really a difficult process to go through with these women, and I've never found any structured means of rehabilitating these girls. What I realize is that you need to be with them, you need to walk with them, you need to be present in their life. And that is why there's no way where you can be technical to say, I am a trained counselor. It has to be something from your heart. It has to be that love and compassion and acceptance of a person. I can give you an example of one girl. If you will have a time or a minute to watch the documentary Sowing Hope, it's still on Sowing, I think you can get it on Google or YouTube. There's one girl in that movie who was forced to kill her own sister when they were abducted. She kept on telling the rebels, I cannot carry her anymore. I'm not able to cross the river with my sister. I cannot carry her. Help me. And they told us, if you cannot carry her, you kill her, or both of you will be killed. So they gave a panga to this girl. She cut her sister into pieces. When this girl came to St. Monica, it was so difficult for me to find a way of even making her forgive herself. And she kept on telling, sister, I cannot forgive myself. I killed my sister. I killed myself. And I had to tell her, listen, you know God has forgiven you. You are forced to do it. You didn't mean to kill your sister. It took so long for this girl to really understand that she was forgiven by God. And there was no way I could put any pressure. I just needed to give her time. Eventually, she got out of the situation, and now she has settled. She lived in St. Monica almost for 4 years. We normally don't keep them for long. But I had to keep her because she was processing all what she went through, to the point that she asked to go out by herself, and luckily enough, she's settled. One time I brought her even to the US to speak about what she did. And so this girl is now settled, but I tell you, it is a long journey.
Thank you for being here, Sister Rosemary. You said many profound things. I think one of my favorite anecdotes was bringing the gender-sensitive men to listen. It's very powerful. And I was sort of interested to hear more about what you think the role of instilling virtue in the men who have the power, and what your women and girls are teaching the men that come to listen, and how maybe they could spread that even further outside of the school.
In fact, that question goes back to families. I really think this problem we can start solving it by using our own families. As I mentioned that when boys and girls, when children are born, they are automatically assigned roles. People give them the roles. You are a boy, you are a girl. Whoever told people that the boys must have blue color, I don't know. Who told people that girls must put on pink color or bright color, I don't know. So, you can see the mistake we make. We let children grow up in this type of situation, and the best we can do is let families begin to address this right from the homes, and eventually let girls and boys grow together, addressing, knowing that they are not exactly the same, but they are equal. It's very important for us to address gender sensitivity in terms of equality and not sameness. You are who you are. You cannot be somebody else. And I think this can also make us respect one another. We can respect also where people belong, respect their gender. That's why we tell the men, you have to respect and listen, and we recognize that you are gender sensitive. We recognize your goodness, but give time to the women to listen, and you learn from them. Listen to what they're telling you. Because many times, men, I don't know if I'm judging you, I don't know if you give a lot of time to listen. Mr. President, can you tell me if we really listen a lot? Women, you can answer for them. Do they listen? Maybe some. We are not generalizing. There are some men who listen, definitely. There are a lot of men who listen.
We have time at this point for 2 more questions.
Again, thank you so much for coming here. It's been a great honor to be able to listen to you speak. I was wondering if I would be able to hear a bit more about how some of these women who you work with are able to reintegrate themselves into these communities, especially after these acts that they may have been forced committed and the people who they were forced to associate with.
Yeah. Actually, the question of integration is a very difficult one, and especially taking the culture in northern Uganda and the stereotype mentality that women must go out and women must be properly married. So to get a woman who comes from captivity with the children, maybe from different rebel commanders, becomes very complex. Their settlement is very difficult. And that is why we keep on giving the skills to these women to help them find their own lives. At one time, I used to tell them, we are giving you these skills, and I want you to get married to these skills, because they will help you to support your children, and they will help you to find a place where you can be either with yourself, grow your children, because nobody is going to take these children in. And if you really imagine, these children come back with their mothers from captivity. We value the question of belonging to a clan. To which clan do these children belong? They belong to nowhere. And in fact, in the national identity of Uganda, most of these children are not there. They are not registered anywhere. So all the life of these children depend on their mothers. The mothers need to work hard to settle and get where they can have their children growing. It's not a simple process.
We have time for 1 more question.
Even more.
Thank you again so much, Sister. Just awesome and amazing work that you've done over the years. But I'm interested to know what your goals are for the near future and beyond, what you foresee as happening with your work.
What I really envision and hope and keep praying that could happen is, first of all, to have the children we have supported all this time to become advocates of a change in the society. And also, I do believe that the women who have passed in our hands could become people who can speak for themselves and speak for others. I'm very sure that these women, in the long run, are going to be peace builders. They are going to contribute a lot to peace building because they are empowered with the education they've received, with the skills they have got, and a good number of these women have their children who are going ahead with education. I'm sure these are people who will form and give a better future to the nation. And I always hope, how about some of the children I supported, if some may become future presidents? They might. It's an ambitious thought. They might. You know? That's my hope. Yeah.
And that is a beautiful way to conclude tonight's program. As a reminder, Sister Rosemary will be in the lobby to sign copies of Sowing Hope. But please join me in thanking Sister Rosemary.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.